Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from AnthonyMorganti.com. Welcome to Mastering On1 Photo RAW 2018. In this video, by request, I'm going to demonstrate my On1 Photo RAW 2018 portrait retouch workflow. It's my opinion that the portrait retouch capabilities of On1 Photo RAW 2018 are probably good enough for most of us. If you're a wedding photographer, portrait photographer, lifestyle photographer, I think you'll find that the tools available in On1 will be more than powerful enough to take care of those types of images. On the other hand, it's my opinion that if you're a fashion photographer, editorial photographer, even a product photographer, I don't think the tools are powerful enough for those type of images that would be found in Vogue magazine. But I'm going to let you make your own conclusion or draw your own conclusion by just demonstrating how to process a portrait. Now for this video, I have this image of my assistant Courtney. I asked her to come in and just wear eye makeup, nothing else. She was a great sport, did it, she looks great. I think this is the type of image most of us would need to process. Now, because it wasn't a spontaneous environment, it was my studio, I made sure that exposure was correct. I don't have to open up like the shadows or bring down the highlights or anything like that. White balance is correct. This is straight out of camera. So the way I go about it is I don't even bother with the develop module. I jump right to the effects module. And as I mentioned, this is my workflow. There's probably other photographers that utilize On1's portrait retouch capabilities better than I. So I encourage you to look at their videos, and maybe you could take part of what they do and part of what I do and blend them together and come out with a great way that works for you. Now again, because this is a non-spontaneous environment, very planned, I don't really need to do anything in the develop module. The exposure's fine, white balance is fine. I don't have to open up the shadows, rein in the highlights. I'll jump right to the effects module. Now I don't have a set order of doing things, meaning I don't like do teeth first, then eyes, then skin, something like that. I kind of look at the image and see what I think needs my attention first. And looking at this image of Courtney, I think it's her hair. She has just a little bit of flyaway hair here. And I think what you'll find is the most difficult thing to take care of in On1 is flyaway hair. You have three tools that you could use. Over here in the tool well, you'll see there's the perfect brush. The keyboard shortcut is Q. Below that is the retouch brush. The keyboard shortcut for that is R. And below that is the clone stamp tool. And the keyboard shortcut for that is S. Now, often the clone stamp tool won't do you any good. Where it can help is if you have a homogeneous background like I have here, perfectly black background. So if you have your subject in front of a perfectly homogeneous uniform background, doesn't matter what color it is, as long as it's homogeneous, the clone stamp tool will probably work out best for you. And it'll be the fastest. Most often though, you're doing like a lifestyle shot or something like that, and the background is going to be a little busier. That's when you're going to have to use one of the other two tools. Some images, the perfect eraser works best. So we'll click on that, and I'll usually try that one first. There's really only one tool attribute for the perfect eraser, and that's brush size. Use the right bracket key to make it larger, left bracket key to make it smaller, and usually just want it slightly bigger than the flyaway hair you're trying to get rid of, and just paint right over that hair. And this is where it takes a while. You have to let On1 do its thing to erase away that hair. So it's tedious. So you're going to have to come in here and go across every stray hair one by one, and it's going to take you a while. Sometimes, especially with certain types of backgrounds, and if the contrast isn't quite right between the background and your subject's hair, the perfect eraser won't do a good job. And then I suggest you go to the retouch brush. There are a couple more attributes for the retouch brush. You still have the size, and use the bracket keys again to affect the size. But you could also affect the feathering. Usually to get rid of stray hairs, I like my feathering relatively low, like somewhere between 10 and 20. and opacity at 100%. Again, I would get the brush just big enough to take care of the stray hair and paint across the hair. And like I said, it's relatively tedious. So you're going to have to go hair to hair, and hopefully your computer's a little faster than mine is. Mine gets bogged down by the software I use to record the screen. But typically this would be a little faster than that. You can see how it messed up right there. It didn't do that hair very well. But if you're lucky enough and used a homogeneous background, you could use the clone stamp tool. So click on that. And what you need to do is keep feathering relatively low still. I'll leave it at 0 to demonstrate it. And opacity at 100. And you need to sample the background. And sample somewhere near where you want to get rid of the stray hair. And I'm going to fix this smudge that happened over here. So you would hold in the Alt or Option key. Alt if you have a PC, Option if you have a Mac, and you see the cursor turns into that crosshair. Click once with the left mouse button. Now we sampled that. So you could come in here and clone stamp away the hair. So just keep an eye on that plus sign. That's where you're grabbing the sample from. And you want to go across and take out all those stray hairs. Now you got to be careful you don't bite into her head, because it's going to look like you took a chunk out of her hair. And you don't want to do that. So just be, it's kind of like measuring. You want to err on the side that if you're measuring a piece of wood that it's going to be too big, so you could just go back and then just retrim it or recut it smaller. And you want to do that with this hair. So you don't want to go too crazy. So take it off a little at a time. You may find that you'll need to resample again, and if that's the case, then resample and go on. Now I'm not going to do her whole head of hair because we just really don't have time for that, but you get the idea. So start out, if you have the homogeneous background, then just start out with the clone stamp tool and do it right away, and then maybe clean up any tricky hairs with either the perfect eraser or the retouch brush. If on the other hand, your background is not homogeneous, then start out with the perfect eraser, try that first, then move to the retouch brush and go from there. Now, as I look at the image, I think the next thing I want to work on is her teeth. Her teeth look pretty good, but there is just a little bit of yellow, a little bit of tartar, and we're going to take care of that. And to do that, I am going to use the color enhancer filter. So I'll apply the color enhancer filter. And I'm going to go down here where it says color range, and I'm going to click on the yellow swatch. So we're just going to affect yellow. And I'm going to take saturation all the way down. And then I'm going to go up here where it says purity, and where it says highlights, I'm going to move that up. And I'll probably move that all the way up. And you can see it whitened her teeth up really nicely. So that's good. But you can see it kind of sucked the color out of her face and her hair. So what do we got to do to fix that? Well, we got to put a mask on it. So I'm going to click up here on this little mask, and we're going to invert the mask. We're going to click right here. So that's as if this color enhancer filter isn't being applied anywhere. But we're going to paint in the effect where we need it. And where it says mode, it's currently on paint out. Go on paint in. Keep feathering somewhere around 40, 50 in there somewhere. And get a brush. Again, you would use the left bracket key to make it larger, get the left bracket key to make it smaller, the right bracket key to make it larger. And you get one that's going to do the job, and then just click in there and paint in where you need the yellow removed. So a little bit more tedious. You got to kind of go over each tooth, but it's still not that bad. And you could go relatively quickly. And so come in, you want to avoid, of course, the gums and her lips and things like that. You just come in. We could get those bottom teeth too, even though they're way in the background. Can't really see them. And come in here and up in there and around. And when I'm done, what I'll do is I'm going to turn on the mask. So go over here where it says view, and let's view the mask. And you can see I missed a lot of stuff. Like right in there. I missed the edge of that tooth, the middle of this tooth. So wherever you missed, you want to just clean up. And if you accidentally go over, let's say, her gums or her lips or anything like that, just go back up here where it says mode and change it to paint out, and then just paint it out. So that looks pretty good right there. We got all her teeth. We're going to turn the mask off by clicking on view again, and we're done. So we're done with the color enhancer filter. Go back to view by clicking on the view magnifying glass over here in the tool well, and then zoom back out by clicking on the image. So she has nice white teeth now. There is before and there is after. Now, the next thing I want to do is her eyes. So I'm going to zoom in on her eyes. So I'm going to click right here. And I'm going to add another color enhancer filter. So I'm going to go to color enhancer. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go right here where it says saturation. And what I do is I'll turn saturation all the way up. Now you can see it really, made it look horrible, right? But we're going to do what we did last time. We're going to get a mask. We're going to invert it. So now it's not being applied anywhere. We're going to go to paint in mode. Make sure you're in paint in mode. We're going to get a brush that is just kind of the width of her iris by using the right bracket key in this case to make it just a little bigger. And we're just going to paint it in. And I might have to get the left bracket key to make it a little smaller to get up in here. And then we're going to do the same thing on this one. And I guarantee you it's going to look horrible when I show the mask in a minute. But you'll see what I mean in a minute. Kind of doing this. A lot of people do skin first. And to tell you the truth, most of the time I probably would do skin earlier than I'm doing now. But I kind of wanted to show you right off the bat about how I would use two of the same filter to affect or to adjust two different things. So we're going to go and view that mask. And you can see that it looks pretty bad, doesn't it? So let's clean it up a little bit. Let's go in here. And I'm doing this purposely on a mouse, by the way, to kind of prove to you that you could do all these adjustments with a mouse, that you don't need a Wacom tablet. Now, with that said, a Wacom tablet is easier if you have one. And I have one currently 3 inches from my little finger. And I'm tempted to use it, but I won't. I'm going to keep using this mouse just to prove that you could do it with the mouse. So we have that. We're going to turn the mask off by clicking there. And I'm going to zoom out. So I'm going to go back to view and I'm going to zoom out to kind of get a look at what we did. There's before and there's after. So you can see it's a subtle effect, and I think this is where On1's portrait retouch capabilities shine. You're not really going to be overdoing anything usually. So it's going to just look like, a very nice processed portrait. So that's her eyes. Now, I want to copy this mask. So right here where it says copy, I'm going to copy it. And the reason why I'm copying it is because I want to add another filter. I'm going to add dynamic contrast. And you can see that it really showed every little pore and really doesn't look good. The reason why I'm adding it though is I want her irises to really pop, and dynamic contrast will do that. And I'm just going to even leave the default settings. I'm going to click on the mask, and now I'm going to paste the mask right here where it says paste. I copied the mask from the second color enhancer filter we added, and now I'm pasting it. Now you can see that it removed the effect from everywhere but her eyes. There's before and there's after. There's before and there's after. So you could see that it did a nice job. Now, usually you would like the hair to be pretty sharp, and you'd like the lips to be sharp, the eyelashes to be sharp. So I'm going to add to this mask. I'm in paint in mode, and I want to paint in the effect. So I'm going to get a pretty big brush by hitting the right bracket key, and I'll leave feathering at 41. And I'm just going to paint in some dynamic contrast to Courtney's hair. And have to adjust the brush accordingly. And so it's not affecting her eyes. We already have that painted in there. And if I go down here and click on the View Mask icon there, you could see it's still on her eyes. Now in this case, because it's dynamic contrast, I'd like her eyelashes to be sharp too. So I'll get a smaller brush and we'll go across her eyelashes as well. Like that. And we want her eyebrows to be sharp. So we could just come in here and paint it onto her eyebrows like this. And even her lips. You may want her lips to be kind of sharp. Now for her lips, I think I want feathering, if I could stop that, there we go. Feathering to be at 100 for her lips. So it's a little just, the transition is a little softer. There we go. Just like that. So we'll look at the mask. There's View. You can see I want her hair sharp, her eyebrows, her eyelashes, and her lips. And I missed a spot of her lips right there. So we'll take care of that really very quickly. Okay, we'll turn that mask off by clicking on View again. Now we're finally going to do skin. You could do skin earlier if you, in your workflow. You know, feel free. Most people do it earlier in the workflow. And to tell you the truth, usually I do too. But I kind of wanted to jump into her teeth and eyes to show you how you could use two different filters to affect two different parts of the image. So we're going to go to skin retouching right here. And what I suggest you do right off the bat is click on this little eyedropper and sample her skin. Because everyone has different color skin. And we want to make sure that the skin retouching sliders affect the skin of the facial skin of your subject and not affect anywhere else. So I'm going to click right on her skin. All right. Now you could try the presets. There's subtle. There's moderate. There's strong. Strong looks actually pretty good. In the drop down, I think there's shine reducer and natural. You could try some of those. But I think strong looked pretty good. Now you could come in here with the individual sliders and try them. Like if you want to do more smoothing, you would move it to the right. Actually, that looks pretty good too. Maybe a little bit overdone. So let's bake that down a little bit. Personally, I prefer to process my images so the person still looks like the person. I don't want to make it look too fake. I don't want it to look like it's some cheap Instagram filter on them. Generally speaking, I will move the sliders so that it just kind of softens the edge a little bit. But things are still there, meaning, you know, freckles are still there. Definitely don't want to, I never remove moles unless my subject asks me to. Blemishes, though, pimples, I will remove because those are temporary. That's not really part of the person. So what I'll do now is I'll turn this off and on. There's before and there's after. So you can see it's just a subtle, it added a little kind of warmth to her face a little bit. But I think it did a nice job. Now, theoretically, when we use this eyedropper, we restricted the adjustment to her skin. You could take this range and you could try to move this. To the right, you're going to affect more than the skin on her face. To the left, you're going to progressively do less so that it really is staying away from her eyes where it's black, darker parts of her hair, things like that. Personally, what I prefer to do is use a mask, a traditional mask. So I will keep the range around its default position is what I found works pretty good. Then I open up the mask for skin retouching and I make sure that I'm painting out the effect. And especially when your model has light hair or dark hair, if the hair matches or is close in tone to their skin, then the skin retouching tool will affect it. So you got to be aware of that it could affect. And since the tone of her skin is close to the tone of her hair, it can't help but affect some of her hair. And I don't want it to. I want her hair nice and sharp and crisp. It's usually the way I like to do it. There might be situations where you don't want her hair to be as sharp as I'm making it. It's, that's the great thing about photography, is we could all make it our own. Now you could come in, of course, and copy that mask we used last time and put it on here. Oops, I kind of slipped, but that's okay. That, of course, will work. So we got it. Let's kind of do a before and after real quick. There is before and there is after. There's before and there's after. So you can see it's pretty subtle. This is my style. And that's why I encourage you to look at other photographers and see how they do it. Okay, the last thing I want to do is I just want to bring a little redness in her lips. I want to make her lips a little redder. So I'm going to open up a color enhancer. And we could go right to red, and I could turn saturation up. And you can see how it's making everything red. But you know what we're going to do now, right? We're going to get that mask. We're going to invert the mask so it's not applied anywhere. And we're going to paint in the effect. So go up where it says mode and go to paint in. And you're going to get a brush that fits her lips nicely. And just kind of paint it in. And don't worry if it looks too heavy. And I'm going to show you something in a minute. All right. Overall, that looks a little heavy. And I like, for the lips, I like the feathering high. So at 100. All right. So just make sure that you have it on her lips. All right, that looks like a little girl got her in her mom's makeup and put on lipstick. So what we're going to do is the opacity. We're going to take opacity down. We're just going to bring it way down. Even around 20. There's before and there's after. Just adds a little vibrance to her lips. And I want to look at the mask because it looks uneven. Yeah, it is uneven. And if you slipped again, remember, you could go back to paint. God, if I could do it without bringing that header down, to paint out mode. And let's say I slipped and was on her teeth or something, then I could paint it out from those areas. And then go back to paint in mode and paint it in where needed. All right, so we'll turn off the view, and that is that. And that is really how I do a portrait. Again, there is before and there is after. That's just my style. Now, there are, other things, as I mentioned, that other types of photography that I think On1 doesn't do a super great job for, types of portrait photography, that is fashion, editorial even, and when I say product photography, that's when you have a model in the product shot. She's advertising her earrings, something like that. I don't think that On1 does a nice enough job or a good enough job. We have like these bags or these little creases under her eyes. You could get rid of those. What you would do is you would get a dynamic contrast filter, and you would then take these sliders down, and then you would get a mask. You would invert it, right? Then you're going to paint in the effect, and you're going to get a larger brush, and you're going to paint in the effect across these lines, like that. It does an okay job, okay, but not necessarily a great job. Then what you could do is you would copy this mask, then you would go to add filter, and you would get a tone enhancer. And then what you're going to want to do here is go where it says shadows, and you want to open the shadows up. Now it's opening them everywhere. So what we're going to do though is get that mask, and we're going to then paste the mask we just copied, and you could see that it lightened them up under her eyes. There's before and there's after. So then you could come in here and even lighten them up even more. There's before, after, before, after. So you could see you could do it. I just don't think it's as powerful of a tool as some other programs. And if you want, you could try to bring exposure up a little bit, but that usually gives it away. So you want to stay away from exposure. So just basically shadows and blacks. And again, there is before and there is after. Before, after. So you could soften them up a little more. I don't like that one. I think it's starting to not look like her. So that's why I don't care for that one. But here's the whole thing. There's before and there's after. Before, after. So that's how I do it, all right? Now, I, again, encourage you, check other photographers out. See how they do it. Maybe they do something a lot better than I do it, and you could take that little part of what they do better and incorporate it into your photography post-processing. Thank you, everyone that watches my videos. I truly do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.